Dune is an epic interplanetary mythical action-adventure set on distant worlds about 8,200 years into the future. Directed by Denis Villeneuve, this film had an estimated budget of $165 million and a worldwide gross of $398 million, so it didn't do badly given the present situation. Just how well would it have done without a COVID-19 pandemic? I guess we'll have to wait for the sequel before we find out. I had several requests to review this 4K before the discs were actually released, so evidently quite a few people had seen this film in the cinema, were quite taken with it, and it does seem to have developed a bit of a following. Frank Herbert wrote the first Dune novel in 1965, the first of what was to become a whole series, and like all great science fiction works, elements were borrowed from other great science fiction authors, most notably Isaac Asimov and the Foundation series, but Herbert's novels were so popular that they will go on to influence other great science fiction works, and most notably of those has to be Star Wars, particularly the desert Tatooine planet, which you can clearly see is a representation of Dune. Herbert was just about to write the seventh and final novel to wrap everything up when he died in 1986, just as I was reading Heretics of Dune. And so, just like Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, we never got a concluding chapter, and so we'll never know how the story was to end. The film was only released to cinemas in October 2021, and here we are in January 2022, and it's already available to purchase on home movie disc. How times have changed, because I remember when I was young, if you missed a film in the cinema, you'd have to wait for up to 4 or 5 years before it would be screened on television, and television imagery in those days was hardly cinematic, and if I recall correctly, the widest films were sometimes cropped down to about 38% of the picture, so it really wasn't a way to see your films. Here we are today. We get these films available for viewing in the home, and they look and sound absolutely fabulous. There is a good cast in this film. You'll recognise quite a lot of the faces, and so not surprisingly all the performances are very good. It's a well-made film with a standout factor surely being the sound, which has to be among the best that I've ever heard. We'll come on to that a bit later. This film was shot entirely on video at a resolution of 4.5K, so I was quite surprised to see the IMAX claim towards the end of the end credits. However, apparently in cinemas they did blow it up to 1:43:1 for the tallest IMAX screens, with some 1:78:1 as well, I believe, but this disc is wholly cropped to 2.4:1 approximately. So we've not got those slightly enlarged areas like you do in other films, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Dark Knight Rises, Tenet, or Christopher Nolan films, of course, so perhaps he puts his foot down a little more than Denis Villeneuve does to make sure his films get seen in the best possible way on home video. Irrespective of that, the clarity of this is very good. It's a very sharp film, however it is very dark too, so a lot of the time the resolution is almost lost, and a couple of times on my system here with the video projector I really couldn't see what was going on. There's a sequence about half an hour from the end, 25 minutes from the end, where a long period it does go very dull, very grey, but I suspect on some people's televisions it will still look fairly good in those areas, might even look superlative. So one review to look out for perhaps will be Keith at Euphoria Pictures, because he swears by his OLED television. We'll see what he thinks of it, hopefully. I did double check this on my system in the living room, and it was just the same on that. That's not an OLED television, so perhaps it's going to be something a bit more general that we find some people are not quite as impressed with the image quality on this as we perhaps should be. Or it could be because I'm just running HDR here on both my systems, and this one does boast Dolby Vision, so maybe it's been optimized for Dolby Vision and HDR has been left behind a little. As I mentioned, the sound on this is exceptional. It really is a treat for anyone's system. It even sounded pretty good coming through my television speakers when I was double checking the image quality on that. And this follows really because it did have a 12-track IMAX soundtrack mixed for it for IMAX theatres. So that could be how some of these videos do actually get the IMAX label, because they are putting the best sound possible onto these films. And That really follows in a way, because you see a film at the IMAX and however good your home system is, you come out of there thinking you're really wasting your time, aren't you? But anyway, it sounds fantastic on everything. We're running 5.1 THX Ultra in here, and just about everything sounds good on THX Ultra, but this one I think possibly is the best that I've ever heard in the home. As many of you will know if you've been following my channel, I do like to check the 4K discs against the Blu-ray, because when I first started doing those checks, I was a little surprised by how closely they resembled each other, and usually, it's just the HDR or Dolby Vision that makes the difference. Now, in this one, the 4K, even though I'm not particularly impressed by the image quality on my system, it is still far better than the Blu-ray, which really does look dull by comparison. And I don't think I'd like to watch this film on Blu-ray. So even though I don't think it's going to be the best 4K you're going to see, it's possibly one of those to show as an example of how much better 4K can be. Now, the J card on the Steelbook does list DTS-HD master audio, so I was expecting the 5.1 sound on this was going to be DTS, but in fact it's Dolby Digital, and it's not even DTS on the Blu-ray disc, so it's Dolby through and through. It looks like it might just be a bit of a mistake on the J card. So if you're like me and you tend to prefer DTS 5.1 occasionally to Dolby Digital 5.1, then you're going to be disappointed, I think. But let me know if you find those DTS soundtracks on here. Maybe it's one of the foreign language soundtracks, I didn't think to check those. There are about an hour's worth of extras, and they're just on the Blu-ray disc. Now, there's one extra that I saw before watching the film, and it shows one of the giant sandworms, and the makers were really impressed with how the special effects had shown this sandworm, and it did look really good. However, when it came to seeing that same sequence on the film, I could hardly see that sandworm, so all the detail had gone. It'd been more or less blacked out. So it'd be interesting to know, anyone watching in Dolby Vision, whether you can see that sandworm more clearly than I. In cinemas, better projectors, hopefully better video projectors, maybe it showed up perfectly there, and that's possibly why this film has such a good reputation for image quality following its theatrical release. Denis Villeneuve was the man behind Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, and I found that both of those films too had a muted sort of dystopian look, so I think it's just an appearance that Mr. Villeneuve likes to put on his futuristic films, so that would explain somewhat why this film looked a little dark in here. The running time is 2 hours and 35 minutes, but the sound will ensure that whatever you think of the film and however it looks, it certainly doesn't drag. I purchased the Steelbook from HMV, as I said, and if you're into science fiction and in particular Frank Herbert's Dune stories, then this one may well be for you. I do feel that I now want to take a look at David Lynch's 1984 version of Dune, which, believe me, is saying something, because I haven't actually seen that film since its theatrical release all the way back in 1984. Anyway, the next 4K review should be Last Night in Soho, another, well, what looks like a great film that I managed to miss in the cinemas thanks to COVID-19, but this one does look really good, particularly the scenes of London set in 1965, so that one should be coming soon. In fact, as I speak, it should be coming into this household tomorrow, Monday, release date. So I think I've ordered a special edition from HMV again, so stay tuned for that one. Now, if you fancy a rather special cinema outing sometime soon, I think it's the 11th of February that Death on the Nile opens in the UK. I think it's opening around the same time worldwide. Now, I've been telling quite a few people that it's been shot on 65mm, and given that Murder on the Orient Express on my system is the best of all the 4K releases so far, I think you're going to be in for a treat with Death on the Nile, because they have struck 32 70mm prints for worldwide distribution. I don't know where they've all gone, but one of them's going to the Odeon Leicester Square, and oh, how I want to get up to see that one. So, with a little luck, maybe I'll see you there. Until the next video, bye bye for now.